Stop worrying about the coffee. Seriously, put the calculator down. For the last 20 years, financial gurus have been screaming that your $5 latte is the reason you aren't a millionaire. They tell you that if you just brewed it at home, you'd retire rich. Mathematically, they aren't technically wrong. Saving $5 a day does add up. But strategically, they are leading you into a trap. While you are stressing over a cup of bean water, there are three massive expenses quietly burning through 70% of your income, and nobody is talking about them because they aren't as easy to Instagram. Today, we aren't trimming the edges. We are going after the tens of thousands of dollars you're losing every single year on the big three. I've noticed a pattern in personal finance. We love to focus on the small daily habits because they feel controllable. It is easy to say no to a muffin. It feels manageable. It gives us a little hit of dopamine, like we're being responsible adults. But this is exactly what I call the Latte Factor lie. It's not a lie because the math is fake. It's a lie because of the focus. It's like obsessing over the weight of your carry-on luggage while you're checking a bag that is 40 kilograms over the limit. You're optimizing the wrong variable. Today, I want to walk you through the actual Bureau of Labor Statistics data that shows where your money really goes, and how shifting your focus from lattes to your driveway and your zip code can free up 20 times more cash. If you are tired of budgeting advice that feels like a punishment rather than a strategy, you are in the right place. My goal here is to help you look at the big levers, the decisions that you only have to make once or twice, but that pay you back every single month for a decade. If that sounds like a better return on your time than clipping coupons, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. We talk about the math of wealth here, not just the emotions of spending. Now, let's look at why David Bark's famous Latte Factor took over the world and why we need to upgrade it. Let's be fair to the concept for a second. The Latte Factor was popularized by David Bark, and the core idea is sound. It was never literally just about coffee. It was a metaphor for small, unconscious, recurring spending. It's the subscription you forgot about, the daily takeout lunch, the impulsive snack at the gas station. Bark's point was that these tiny leaks, when you add them up over a lifetime and apply compound interest, turn into a river of lost money. And he's right. If you spend $5 a day, that is roughly $150 a month. Over a year, that is nearly $1,800. If you invested that $1,800 every year for 30 years at 7%, you'd have a very nice pile of cash. The math works. I've run those calculators myself, and they don't lie. However, here is where the logic breaks down in the real world. $1,800 a year is great. I'd love to have an extra $1,800. But the average household expenditure in the United States is hovering around $78,000 a year. That means your coffee habit, even if it's an aggressive one, accounts for maybe 2 to 3% of your total financial life. You are spending 97% of your mental energy trying to fix 3% of your problem. It is the definition of diminishing returns. We spend so much time feeling guilty about the small pleasures that we ignore the massive structural costs that we've just accepted as normal. We sign a 30-year mortgage in an afternoon, but we agonize over a $4 espresso for 10 minutes. Why do we do this? Why do we obsess over the small stuff? Psychology tells us it's because the small stuff is frequent. You buy coffee every day, so you are constantly reminded of the cost. You only pay your mortgage or your car insurance once a month, and often it's on autopay. It becomes invisible. The pain of paying is separated from the consumption. With a latte, you hand over the card and you get the drink right then. It feels like a transaction. Your housing and car costs just feel like life. They feel like the baseline cost of existing. But that baseline is exactly where the danger hides. We assume our rent or our car payment is fixed, but it's actually the most variable and impactful choice we make. You might be thinking, okay, Tom, but I can't just change my rent tomorrow. And you're right, it's harder to move than it is to skip a Starbucks. But here is the kicker. If you ignore what I'm about to show you, you could cut every single luxury out of your life, coffee, Netflix, dining out, and you would still be broke. The math I'm about to share proves that you can be the most disciplined spender in the world and still lose the game if you get the big three wrong. Let's look at the hard numbers. I pulled the latest consumer expenditure data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This isn't my opinion. This is what people actually spend. The data splits household spending into categories, and 3 specific categories dominate everything else. We call them the Big Three: housing, transportation, and food. According to the BLS, the average household spends roughly 33% of their income on housing. They spend 17% on transportation, and they spend about 13% on food. When you do the addition, that is 63% of the total budget. Nearly 2/3 of every dollar you earn vanishes into just these 3 categories. If you add in healthcare and insurance, which are often tied to these, you are pushing 70%. I want you to visualize a pie chart. Imagine a massive pie representing your paycheck. Before you even touch a slice, the big 3 come in and scoop out 2/3 of it. Housing takes the biggest wedge. Then your car takes a massive slice. Then the grocery store takes another. You are left with a tiny sliver of pie to cover your clothes, your entertainment, your savings, your investments, and yes, your coffee. The Latte Factor focuses on saving crumbs from that tiny sliver. The Big Three approach focuses on reclaiming the rest of the pie. If you can shave just 10% off the Big Three, you save more money than if you eliminated every other discretionary expense combined. This is a concept called financial leverage. In engineering, a lever allows you to move a heavy object with very little force. In finance, leverage usually means debt, but here I'm using it to mean effort versus reward. Cutting coffee is low leverage. You have to exercise willpower every single morning. It's a constant battle. Optimizing your housing or your car is high leverage. You make the decision once, you sign the lease, you buy the used car, and then you reap the savings every single month for years without lifting a finger. You don't have to use willpower to save on a cheaper mortgage. The savings just happen. That is how you build wealth without being miserable. Let's start with the biggest beast in the budget: housing. The average American spends over $26,000 a year on shelter. That's over $2,000 a month. And that is just the average. In major cities, it's much higher. The standard advice is that housing should cost no more than 30% of your gross income. But acceptable doesn't mean optimal. If you are spending 35 or 40% of your take-home pay on rent or a mortgage, you are essentially working almost half the year just to have a place to sleep. The problem is that we view housing as a status symbol rather than a utility. We stretch for the extra bedroom we don't need or the granite countertops that look nice but don't pay the bills. Here is what the math looks like when you optimize. Let's say you are currently paying $2,500 a month for a nice apartment. If you decide to downsize, or move 5 miles further out, or get a roommate, and you can get that cost down to $1,800, you save $700 a month. That is $8,400 a year. That is almost 6 times the savings of cutting out your daily coffee. And here is the beautiful part. That $8,000 is post-tax money. To earn an extra $8,000 in spending power, you'd probably have to get a $12,000 raise at work. Moving apartments is a hassle, I get it. But is a weekend of moving boxes worth a $12,000 raise? I think so. It's not just the rent or the mortgage payment either. Large houses come with large parasites. A bigger house costs more to heat and cool. It has higher property taxes. It has more maintenance. If you own a home, the rule of thumb is to budget 1% of the home's value for repairs every year. On a $500,000 house, that is $5,000 a year just to keep it standing. If you choose a smaller, more modest home, you aren't just saving on the mortgage. You're saving on the electricity, the taxes, the insurance, and the repairs. These are the hidden costs that the Latte Factor ignores entirely. A smaller footprint doesn't just save money, it simplifies your life. So what is the protocol here? I'm not saying you need to live in a shoebox, but I am saying you need to challenge the stretch. When the bank tells you you are approved for $400,000, buy the house for $250,000. If you are renting, look for the good enough apartment, not the luxury complex with the pool you'll never use. Or consider house hacking, renting out a room or a basement unit to offset the cost. If you can get your housing expense down from 33% to 20% of your income, you have effectively won the game. You have freed up enough cash flow to max out your retirement accounts without ever skipping a latte. Now, fixing your housing takes time. You have leases, you have closings, it's slow. But the second category, transportation, this is where people bleed money the fastest, and it is also the easiest leak to plug. I see people driving cars that are worth more than their net worth. They are literally driving their retirement down the highway, and it's depreciating every mile. If you think a $700 car payment is normal, we need to have a serious talk right now. Transportation is the second largest expense for most households, eating up 17% of the budget. That is over $13,000 a year on average. The culprit is almost always the car payment. We have normalized the idea that you should always have a car payment. You pay off one car, trade it in, and get a new loan. It's a perpetual cycle of debt. And it's not just the payment. A more expensive car means higher insurance, higher registration fees, and often higher repair costs. We justify it by saying we need a reliable car to get to work. But there is a massive difference between a reliable $10,000 Honda and a $40,000 SUV. Let's run the numbers on being car poor. Say you have a new SUV with a $600 payment. Add $200 for full coverage insurance. That is $800 a month before you even put gas in it. Now compare that to driving a paid-off 5-year-old sedan. Your payment is $0. Your insurance might drop to $100. You are saving $700 a month. That is $8,400 a year. Combine that with the housing savings we just talked about, and you are looking at nearly $17,000 a year in savings. That is more than many people save in a decade. And all you had to do was drive a slightly older car. The real tragedy of the car payment isn't the cash flow, it's the opportunity cost. If you took that $700 a month and invested it in the S&P 500 instead of giving it to a car dealership, over 10 years you would have roughly $120,000. Over 20 years, you're looking at nearly $350,000. That is the true cost of that new car smell. You aren't paying $40,000 for the car. You are paying $300,000 of your future freedom. When you frame it like that, the heated seats don't seem quite as comfortable. The protocol here is aggressive. If you have a car payment that is choking you, get rid of it. Sell the car. If you are underwater, meaning you owe more than it's worth, it might be worth taking a small personal loan to cover the difference just to get out of the high-interest asset that is dropping in value like a rock. Buy a boring, reliable, used car for cash if you can, or with a very small short-term loan. If you are a 2-car household, Ask yourself if you can survive with one car and some strategic Uber rides. Even spending $200 a month on Uber is cheaper than paying for a second car that sits in the driveway 90% of the time. Finally, let's talk about food. This is the third of the big three, taking up about 13% of the average budget. That is $10,000 a year. Now, unlike housing and cars, this one is tricky because it actually does look a lot like the Latte Factor. It's made up of daily transactions, but the scale is different. We aren't talking about a $5 coffee. We are talking about $20 salads, $40 Uber Eats orders, and grocery carts full of food that goes bad before we eat it. The convenience economy has destroyed our food budgets. We pay a premium for someone else to cook our food, and then we pay another premium for someone to drive it to our house. If you spend $15 on lunch every workday, that is $300 a month. If you order takeout for dinner 3 times a week at $40 a pop, that is another $500 roughly. You are at $800 a month just on convenience food, and you haven't even bought groceries for the fridge yet. By simply meal prepping lunches and restricting takeout to once a week, you can easily slash that spending in half. Saving $400 a month on food is $4,800 a year. That is almost $5,000. Again, notice the scale. Cutting coffee saves you $1,000. Optimizing your food strategy saves you $5,000. So, we have talked about housing, cars, and food. But I want to show you exactly what happens when you stack these savings together. This is the part of the video where the numbers get ridiculous. If you do this right, you aren't just saving a few bucks, you are literally buying back years of your life. Let's look at the combined total of optimizing the big three versus the Latte Factor. Let's stack it up. Housing optimization, $8,000 a year. Transportation optimization, $5,000 a year, being conservative. Food optimization, $3,000 a year. Total savings, $16,000 per year. That is $1,300 a month staying in your pocket. Now compare that to the Latte Factor. Cutting coffee saves you maybe $1,000 a year. The big three strategy is 16 times more effective. You would have to stop drinking coffee for 16 years to match what you can save in 1 year by fixing your housing, car, and food spending. It is not even a competition. Think about what an extra $16,000 a year does for you. That is a fully funded 401k. That is a down payment on a rental property every 2 years. That is the ability to take a lower paying job that you actually enjoy. That is financial freedom. And the best part? You can still drink the latte. If you save $16,000 on the big stuff, spending $1,000 on coffee is a rounding error. You have earned it. This is why I say the Latte Factor is a lie, not because saving is bad, but because it distracts you from the moves that actually change your life. So, here is the new framework. I call it Sequence of Returns on Effort. Step 1. Audit your big three. Are you house poor? Are you car poor? Are you eating your paycheck? Fix those first. Make the hard decisions to downsize, sell the car, or learn to cook. Secure the $10,000 to $20,000 in annual savings. Step 2. Automate those savings into investments so you don't accidentally spend it. Step 3. Buy the latte. Seriously, buy the coffee, buy the nice cheese. Enjoy the small things because you have already won the war on the big things. You don't need to live a life of deprivation, you just need a life of prioritization. The Latte Factor isn't a lie. It's just only part of the truth. Yes, your daily coffee habit might be burning $1,000 a year. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows the average household spends over $26,000 on housing, $13,000 on transportation, and $10,000 on food. That's why cutting lattes while hanging on to an overpriced apartment and 2 car payments is like bailing out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. If you want to save real money, trim the big 3 first. Maybe 6 grand off housing, 4 grand off the car, 3 grand off food. And then use the latte factor to fine-tune. Coffee might buy you an extra $1,000 a year. A smaller house and cheaper car can buy you $20,000 a year and years of financial freedom. I want to hear from you in the comments. I want you to run your own numbers. Look at your last 3 months of bank statements. What percentage of your income is going to housing, transport, and food? Is it 60%? Is it 80%? Let me know the number below. It's anonymous, but it helps everyone see the reality of what we are up against. And if you found value in this breakdown, share this with a friend who is stressing over pennies while dollars fly out the window. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.